on there, view your films. Films. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Films.
Welcome back, movie fans. This is a special episode of Sequels Suck. We are talking all things Scream with the announcement of Scream 6, a special, legacy character coming back for the sixth movie, and just all things happening in the world of Scream with the release of the digital version of number 5. We've got the DVD and 4K, Blu-ray, all that sort of stuff coming out soon. I thought I'd get a super fan on that isn't Angus, and I invited on Michelle. How are you, Michelle?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I'm actually really excited because one of my favorite characters of all time and actresses, Courtney Cox, has apparently signed on for Scream 6.
Well, not apparently. I just read on hellosydney.com that she's been confirmed.
Yeah, so I think that was something I'd seen, and you know, you hear rumors, and as far as I could tell, Hello Sydney are not going to run with just a rumor. They're going to make sure it's confirmed, which all good websites should do anyway. And they're a very, Hello Sydney has been around for a long time. So when they report it, it's pretty much a lock to be happening. What's your take? I mean, for me personally, the selfish fan in me loves seeing Courtney Cox in anything, and especially Scream movies. But I also, as a film fan, feel like maybe Gale Weathers has run its course, and the Sydney Prescott being in that same basket. What are your initial thoughts? Because I feel like the legacy characters, in this last movie, the script writers and the directors gave us an out where the torch had been passed. We don't need these guys back anymore. Is there anything? What's Gale going to be doing in this next movie?
That's what I think. There'd have to be a really good reason for her to want to come back, because they wrapped up her story. And I'm the same. I'd love to see all the originals back again, but I think they could make a movie without her and it would be okay. The same for Sydney. If she doesn't come back, she doesn't come back, and I think the movie can continue on.
Yeah, it's definitely a very biased view. I get it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people, whether it's people at hellosydney.com. I know Ryan C. Showers does a podcast. He loves Courtney Cox and Gale Weathers like I do myself. I think there's definitely a lot of people in the community that speak out on the community, whether it is in podcast form or website form, that love Sydney Prescott, love Gale Weathers, love Dewey Riley, but you sort of got to wonder at what point do you have to let go and move the franchise in a slightly different direction with newer characters, or is it just the love of it not the same when you've got Carpenter sisters and Meek's nephews and nieces and stuff like that? I don't know if it's going to hold. That's the problem. Are you always going to have the hook that you need Sydney and Gale there to keep us old school fans coming back?
And at one point, do characters like that just say, "You're on your own. We're done with this ghost space thing. We've dealt with 5 movies, 5 attacks. You're on your own now."
Yeah, it's an interesting. You're right. The only thing I was thinking, I'm like, is Gale going to be in it? But again, very similar to this movie, just a very small role, maybe even not there where the attacks are. Maybe she's still reporting. She's on the TV. She's got some sort of role, but not an actual physical role, if that makes sense. But
yeah, they call her for help, or you cut to her living her life and they're just asking for advice on how to deal with, I don't know. It's a tricky one.
It is, and it you kind of think leaving off after 5 that if you're going to see her again, she's written a book about Dewey. But again, I'm not too sure. It'd have to be something amazing, unless she comes back and she is a victim and kind of happy to go out that way.
Well, I know
guess
she wanted to. Courtney Cox said she wanted to be killed off in Scream 4.
right. Okay.
So, and she wasn't, you read sort of things, she wasn't the biggest fan, I don't think, of Scream 4.
Well, that's interesting because I hadn't actually heard that take, but I know Scream 4 wasn't probably the greatest set to be on. I did hear a lot of negative or apparently the environment was quite toxic. I don't necessarily think it was between the cast. It was more, the pressure on Kevin Williamson with the script and, him sort of jumping ship when things weren't going really well and he had other stuff to do. And obviously the Weinsteins micromanage the hell out of people. And I think that contributed to not a happy set at all times. And Courtney Cox being the person she is with a lot of experience in the field, I probably would understand that she would understand or realize how bad a situation is, and probably that's why. And she was going through her sort of, I guess, somewhat breakup / divorce with David Arquette, so that probably wasn't great either.
No, well, there's a quote in the Entertainment Weekly. They released that Scream 25th anniversary edition.
Magazine,
there was a quote in there, something about how she wasn't like a big fan of Scream 4.
So Michelle, you've got some. Have you got a tweet or confirmation from Hello Sydney with a little bit more detail about Gale Weathers' return?
So a confirmation from Hello Sydney where she was talking to Variety, and she's got a script, is excited to read it. Filming starts in June in Canada, but she's not allowed to say anything.
Of course, and we all know that script is probably the dummy script and would be. I actually wonder too with these scripts that it's almost like they probably need two versions anyway. We know the secrecy on the other films, especially the second and third films where they had to rewrite stuff because it was leaks. So Michelle, the interesting thing is, I wonder, there's a script supposedly. My theory is that there was probably a script, or at least a partial script, a closer, maybe even completed script or outline before Scream 5 was actually in cinemas, like just on the off chance that it did really well. We know, I mean, if you're a fan, you know that the fifth movie was finished a long time ago, and unfortunately because of COVID and release dates and all that sort of stuff got pushed well back. But I think James and Guy have come back to do the script. I think they probably had a good idea of what they wanted the next movie to be if this one was successful, which it has been and been green lit. But I wonder at what point how many scripts there actually are, because surely there has to be a script that has Sydney and Gale in it. There has to be a script that doesn't have both in it, and then probably a script that has one of them. Would you think? Generally a pretty decent outline. So it's funny that if Courtney hasn't read a script yet, like it's probably like it exists in paper form, but it is what it is, because they'd be wanting, I'm sure, Nev to sign on.
I think so, yeah.
And then worst case scenario, they can't write the character too in depth until they get some sort of contract signed, but they also have to have a backup plan if Nev doesn't want to come on. So,
well, surely they've set this up for a new trilogy, I would think. Like, we know Kevin Williamson had like an outline written from Scream 1, 2, and 3. So you would think this would be the same Scream 5, 6, and I'm guessing 7.
Yeah, I would have thought the same thing too. I sometimes take a lot of that, in the history of cinema, I feel like we hear this a lot, that there's a plan for a trilogy. They planned, made lots of money. Yeah, we did have a plan for a trilogy. We did have an outline, but sometimes I think that's a lot of potentially hot air. I think some after the fact, like I'm not trying to have a go at Kevin Williamson here either, but I feel like, the story always went that when he sold Scream, he had outlines for a second and third if they were popular, and obviously they were, but those outlines for the second and third ones that he had back in 1996 were, I'm sure, vastly different to what actually we got, because things change. Different characters are popular than others. They kill different characters off, and the seed of the idea that may have been great in 96 changed in 97 and then in 2000. So, and we know that his script for Scream 3 was actually, original script was quite different to what we definitely saw. So I sometimes take it that the little bit of grain of salt these days, because I know even with the Halloween franchise or the reboot, there was talks of, a potential trilogy, but they did 2018 so well that I think it didn't need to go any further. But they bring out Halloween Kills that me and Angus have already talked about, and that, I think that drew a lot of hate from the fans because it was,
Unnecessary.
full on. And I don't want to spoil it, but in my head, I was kind of like, yeah, I can understand there's money to be made here. It's a popular franchise. It's a Halloween franchise. It's horror movie stuff. So why not make another one? But I don't know if they really had an idea. They had some ideas, but sometimes I think they exaggerate their their supposed outlines, and a lot of that is they like to say that after the fact. It's just like George Lucas with the original Star Wars. Like, he had some grand plans. Obviously, he had to condense it to a single movie. He only had X amount of money, and then obviously they expanded out once the first one was the highest grossing movie at the time, and then Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back come out. But even then, there was some ideas, but he definitely changed stuff that was never supposed to happen. So no, it was always going to be a trilogy. It's, well, yeah, maybe you had the money. Yeah, look, why not make a trilogy of movies? But some of the ideas that you came up with didn't exist back when you made Star Wars.
Well, I feel like I think I read somewhere, didn't Kevin Williamson have an outline for Scream 4, 5, and 6? But obviously it changed with like the passing of Wes Craven.
Yeah, so the original, the original story, from all the different things I've read over the years, whether it's been on hellosydney.com or YouTube videos and people that seem to be in the know, that the Kevin Williamson was, I guess, commissioned to look at trying to, I guess, pass the torch for number 4 and have a trilogy of films. And I think probably what's happened is, he had so many other things on his plate to start off with, did something for 4, wrote a script, and then found out that the Weinsteins had also commissioned Wes to write some stuff. Aaron Kruger from Scream 3 come back and write some stuff. I think Kevin just kind of like, F this, I'm going to go and finish whatever TV show he was doing at the time. Or I think he was doing Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, Vampire Diaries.
I was going to, and I mean, for him to have been pretty much on the set early days where the actors got to meet him and stuff, to the point where he was no longer there and not really involved at all, is pretty big. So, and very telling. So, talking about like definitely a toxic environment on Scream 4, but I think he probably did have a decent outline on what he wanted, but they also changed some stuff. I think one of the early ideas was Jill that would survive and would be a killer that would go into the next movie. And that's kind of different. And that's really cool. And that changes, like, new decade, new rules. And I mean, having one of the killers survive and almost effectively get away with it is a pretty cool idea. But I guess with rewrites and then the Weinsteins wanting reshoots and stuff like that, and also having a particular ending, that changes potentially your sequel options. If you kill Jill off and have certain characters live or die, it changes what you do. Again, at least what Kevin may have had planned. And then obviously, the movie not making as much money as the first 3 movies definitely made. It made a profit, but it didn't make as much as they were expecting or hoping. And then that sort of nixed all the ideas of making 5 and 6 as a new trilogy. But that's why this one's interesting. But you'd think hopefully they may have learnt some lessons from the previous Scream stuff, that they had a bit of an outline. I feel like they've had so much downtime since they wrapped on Scream 5 that I just think it would be inconceivable to think they wouldn't have had a fairly decently fleshed out Scream 6 script
Yeah, I agree.
and close to 7, because I think you set up so much with Sam Carpenter with her whole Billy Loomis story, and then obviously Tara, so they both survive. So there's this whole now, which is a bit different. It's like the final girl sisters.
Final Girls, yeah.
And so that's a little bit different. But then you've got the passing of the torch from Gale and Sydney to them. But then so she's got this whole other thing with, I maybe if I don't take my meds, I become a little bit psychotic and a bit knifey.
Well, she was
like
a little
Billy.
bit psychotic by the end of it anyway.
Yeah.
By the end of 5, she was a bit
and so
happy.
yeah, and so there's that, and you would know, following a lot of these pages or websites, like one of the other things in the fan community, which is pretty big at the moment, is who's going to play the mum. So it's like, you got to have Salma Hayek, or you got to have Charisma Carpenter, or you got to have all these like Latino type. What's her name from Desperate Housewives? Eva Longoria. And you've got all these actresses like, that would be kind of cool. And there's definitely some that I think are in the right age bracket that would be the same as sort of that 50 years of age Nev Campbell and all that would have been when they did Scream, the first Scream, that all sort of matches up. But again, that's another really cool element. They can bring in the mum and have this whole backstory even with her. So they've definitely got some options for the next 2 movies. It's just whether fans get on board enough with the characters and hypothetical. Well, we know Courtney Cox is coming back, but whether people can stomach a Scream movie without Sidney Prescott, that's going to be.
It's true, yeah.
That's going to be the interesting part of this, and also we've lost Dewey, so that's the other thing. It's like you're potentially having one legacy character come back,
but also if they bring back both like Gale and Sydney, does it sort of ruin it in the way of like, are they definitely going to survive? Do you know, like it gives it away almost that you'd almost have to kill another one off for it to be interesting, I think.
Yeah. And I think this is where I have potentially an issue with Nev coming back. And don't get me wrong, I love Nev, but I think she's become so untouchable, and I think it would be so wrong to kill her, that there's no surprise level. There's no stakes in her being in the movie. Because yes, she might be in danger a few times, but we know deep down she's never going to die.
No.
So she'll never be. Well, I think it's almost in her contract almost. She can't be the victim. I think she's been set up so well as a final girl that they would never want to have that character die off. So there's no stakes in her being in it. Like we know, again, she might get stabbed like she did in Scream 5. She might be knocked out for a couple of seconds, but the inherent problem is because she's effectively unkillable, then there's no suspense or there's no tension to it.
No, well, she said in the last movie that she survives. She always will.
Yeah. And I think if she ever thought that they were going to kill her off, she wouldn't do the movie. So I think there's too much, almost like Ghostface. It's an honor. Like, I just think she's on too much of a pedestal now. You can't, you just couldn't kill her. And I don't think anyone would be happy. Like, it wouldn't work. It'd be just suicide for the movie to kill her off. Like, it'd be massive. It'd be massive if she was the first kill, because that would be so unexpected. But it also, they've kind of made a rod for their own back a little bit, because she is, I think, one of almost the perfect final girl in cinema history. And you just like, how can you kill her now? Like, how do you even do that? I don't think you can. Whereas I think people, I would be devastated if Gale got killed too, but I think there's definitely some wiggle room there. The only other thing I was thinking about with Gale coming back, about her role, and it only just sort of come to me, I think her story could work if she almost has a revenge plot type thing. I think it makes sense if she comes back, if she thinks there's maybe a third killer from the movie, and she somehow thinks that there's, she wants to finish it off for Dewey and what have you. But again, I don't see logically why she would, apart from that, come back.
No,
So
she'd almost
I'm
have
gonna-
to be so mad at Sam for bringing Dewey into the situation and almost getting him killed. But yeah, I don't know. She'd have to really lose her mind.
And just a funny thought, and I can't remember if I actually said this recently when we talked about Scream 5. Gale got shot again
Mhm.
in the same spot she got shot in Scream 2.
Mhm.
Yet they seem to just wrap her up very quickly without bullet removal or not any sort of surgery.
No, well, if you watch the honest trailer for Scream
Yes.
2022, yeah.
Oh no,
They're
I haven't
both-
seen. I actually haven't seen
Oh.
it.
Oh, you should. It's good, but it sort of says at the end, they've just had these like gaping stomach wounds, and then 10 minutes later they're sitting in the back of an ambulance, completely fine, not on their
Yeah.
way to hospital.
Yeah.
I think, how did they keep doing this?
Yeah, no, it makes zero sense. I was actually thinking that the other day, and when I watched it again, I'm like, oh, that's right. She's almost bleeding out. Good old Gale, and Sydney's like, oh, the amber won't get here quick enough, and whatever. And then she gets up, she gets involved,
And saves the day.
but you need that bullet kind of removed, and that was my funny thing. Like, Scream 2 is my favorite Scream movie, but that's the one sort of flaw, I think. And it only took me until about the 50th watch that I go, oh, hang on a sec, she's just been shot. And yeah, she looks like death warmed up, but she is walking around just with a couple of bandages across her waist. And you go, hang on, there's a bullet lodged in her body somewhere. And that probably would need to get sorted out instead of her jumping in the back of a ambulance with Dewey.
I think so, yeah.
So I thought it was funny, and I'm like, I don't know whether in this movie they kind of took the piss a little bit, because it was kind of like, well, yeah, look, Chad's alive and he's given the thumbs up, but he's had 35 stab wounds and a major artery severed. So, but he's still conscious enough to give us that. And then Tara, when we discussed off air, Tara had that many stab wounds in 2 different attacks, and I think these people have had more damage other than Bruce Willis in a Die Hard movie, and they somehow survived.
But we just have to suspend disbelief and realize it's a horror movie and not based in reality.
That's true, but sometimes I think there's aspects of Scream that are really good because it does feel like it's grounded in reality.
That's true, yeah.
And it's not a stretch, but then when you think about some scenes, you go, oh, that is a little bit over the top. Which is another point that for anyone that does listen to this that loves Scream, for anyone that complaining about Amber being too small to overwhelm Dewey, can you please go back and watch Scream 4? And you got 2 people that are about 5'0" called Jill and Charlie, and they seem to be walking 6'2" and beating up on people. So
exactly,
you just got to remember that Scream 4 exists, and that I think anything Amber does in comparison is nothing like Jill and Charlie. Or at least if you're going to be critical of that, be critical of Scream 4 as well.
I think so, yeah.
So I guess in being positive about Scream 5, or at least me being generally fairly optimistic and positive, there are some issues, and it wasn't until you brought up a very interesting issue about the shots of Stu Marker's house and a potential room that does not even exist in the house.
The basement.
Yeah, so to tell the listeners about this, and I know there's a YouTube video, we'll find the link to that. I've got to watch it. You told me about this, but maybe the set was not quite accurate to what we saw in 1996 with the real house.
Well, from what we know from the original, when Stu backs into the room off the kitchen, it's some sort of pantry or like a room we don't really see. But if it was a basement with the stairs that you see Amber walking down, he would have backed into the room and fallen straight down the stairs. So I've seen a few people say there's no basement in that house. People that have been to that actual house, which yes, we know it's someone's real home. It's not, the set of the movie, but it just doesn't exist. And so it shouldn't exist now. They should have been in the garage where they belonged.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, I hadn't even thought about, until you mentioned it, like this Stu backing in and go, oh, I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
And
yeah.
you're right. It must, you sort of think it must be some sort of laundry / butler's pantry or something like that. But you're right.
Well, it's where he pulls out like Sydney's dad. Like that's where he comes out from, when they reveal that he's been tied up. So surely it would take him longer to get down the stairs, grab Neil Prescott, bring him back up the stairs. So yeah, a basement doesn't exist.
So maybe it was built after the fact for the movie.
I think so.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Like, and it's funny, like, movies like that, like, especially in this day and age, like, I wonder how much people go back to older movies to really analyze them on YouTube videos like new movies are, because I think there's an aspect of films that were, things that came out when I was a kid or well before you and I were born that you would not really question it so much because you're like, well, that's just movie magic, and you're not expected to study that too much. And back in the day, a lot of movies were on a set, and very rarely, sometimes if they're outside, it was on location, but generally, you had these really big sets. So you didn't really think about the layout too much, or a lot of it is seen, so you don't have to question it too much. But it's funny, these movies now, especially if you're going into, you're redoing the same location, mind you, building a set for the location or a replica of what the real location is, you go back into that. The inherent problem is the super fans are going to pick that apart and look for anything that stands out and is different that doesn't make sense, which is interesting in that the team of Radio Silence behind this movie are passionate super fans of Scream, but you kind of think, at what point did they say, hang on, we can't do this because we know we're going to get pulled apart. We know the house doesn't have this. We know the fans are going to know that this doesn't, or this is a brand new room that they don't know about, and that doesn't make sense. So it's kind of funny they even went that way. I think script-wise, it makes perfect sense. Because and this is, again, this is to credit you. You touched on something before, that the basement's good in that there's one way in and there's no way out.
One way out. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, for that, I guess the tension of Amber going there the first time before she's revealed as a killer, and then Mindy sort of sneaking up on her and them having that conversation about being the killer, and then again later on when Richie and Sam go down there to get away from Amber. It works plot-wise for that, it works, but I mean, I guess if you analyze the layout of the house, it makes zero sense, because from what we know from the first movie, if you're sitting there and really mapping out at the first film, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So you kind of, why did you do that?
I know, especially for people that have been to the house, like we've been seeing recently, all these people touring Stu Macher's house. We're not jealous about it at all.
No,
No, not at all.
Why would I ever want to go there?
They shot in that real house. There's no basement. And then Radio Silence scouted that house to create the new set for Scream 5. So once again, the basement still doesn't exist. And I understand it works for the plot of the movie, but for crazy superfans like us who do analyze these movies so much, it just seems a bit odd that they'd include it and not put it in the garage, which I think I have read there were scenes meant to be filmed in the garage, but obviously they're either on the cutting room floor or they changed their mind. But it would have been so good to see that like iconic room instead of this new room that doesn't exist.
You know what, it would have been cool if they actually had the garage, but the doggy door not be in the garage anymore.
Well, it's not in the garage anymore. If you look at
there you go.
Yeah, it's gone.
Okay, so I haven't been there. I haven't been there.
I haven't been there. I've just looked it online.
But it would be kind of cool if they go, oh well, the garage is pretty much intact, but we don't have a pet door.
Yeah, or maybe the garage door was busted. They could have done ways where like there was still only one way in, one way out of the garage. Like maybe the roller door just doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. I guess we have confirmed Courtney Cox this morning. as of, well, Australian time, probably 8 hours ago, maybe some point in the morning. I mean, I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't really heard too much about the surviving cast coming back. It was just, I guess, something that was assumed. So I don't even know contractually where everyone is. Where I'm assuming everyone wants to come back, but whether they do is another question. I think obviously the directors are coming back. You know, Radio Silence are doing the movie. The same screenwriters, I should say. Assuming most of that Radio Silence team and their people that they work with, most would be coming back. I'd assume we'll see Mason Gooding back as Chad, Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy back. You know, Sam Carpenter, which is Melissa Barrera, and Jenna Ortega, who is we see just for our fans, we say Tara here in Australia. Tara.
Yeah,
they say Tara, which is weird to me. The first time I heard it, I was like, that's so weird because it's like that's a different spelling to us in Australia. Like
yes, to Tera.
But yeah, I'm not too sure. I don't know how much you've read, but I feel like it was almost like assumed that all of them come back and be great if they would. I'm sure they would all want to come back. It's just I don't think I've ever really noticed anything official either. And it's just funny that Courtney Cox, it's like the legacy characters who have to have a full-on press release to say they're coming back. I'd be surprised if people didn't come back. I
would be too, but they could almost set it up with completely new characters if they wanted to go down that route, because surely everyone's kind of the end we saw they were leaving Woodsboro, at least the Carpenter sisters are out of there. So you've lost that sort of aspect. But unless Chad and Mindy still, live in the house, I'd love to see more of Martha back.
Yeah, actually, we'll quickly deviate and we'll go to Martha. I was happy to see her. And we talked off air about this Marley Shelton spoiler of Skeet being involved in the film. The other interesting aspect to that was, I think, Martha Meeks, because that was another one I think was kind of a spoiler. And again, I can't remember
who showed her.
And it was kind of like then that tweet made or video or story or Instagram post got deleted as well. And then there was like, oh, well, that cat's out of the bag. And then, but the funny thing was, I reckon not long before the movie came out, I'm pretty sure I heard an official, not just a rumor, but an official sort of statement to say that Martha wouldn't be in the movie. Yeah,
I heard that too. Yeah,
her scenes had been cut, and I was kind of like, well, they mustn't mean, if they're trying to trim the movie, and then they're just a bit like, well, she's here just for the sake of it, just so because we want to have Martha in it, and they don't make any sense or they're not important. Then, okay, fair enough, you take it out. But it's just interesting that in the end she was in the movie, and I'm like, was that just a lie they put out, or was there extra stuff with her that we just didn't see? And like you touched on before, maybe they just hit the cutting room floor.
Yeah, I wonder if she had a bigger part originally, if she was in it for longer than the 20 seconds she's on screen.
Yeah, I wonder. I guess something you also just touched on before we talked about Martha was, the twins survive and we have the sisters survive. In what, I guess, real world are those four all in a movie together with Ghostface again? Because I feel like if it's not Woodsboro, then it's kind of, if it just happens to be university or college or whatever they want to call it. So, it kind of feels a bit convoluted that they would all be at the same place.
And then are they also throwing it back to Scream 2 a little too much by sending them to college, which maybe going in this whole recall thing, maybe that is the direction it'll go, but is it a bit too predictable?
Yeah, well, I think, you could have Tara, Mindy and Chad all go to a college campus. But again, like they all get into the same college. And I know the college system in America is quite different than what we have in Australia, whereas I think it's probably more realistic in Australia to all go to the same college if you're all good friends and there's a particular, if you want to study film or whatever, there's definitely ways of probably getting in a lot easier than in America. But and then you've got to have Sam in there somewhere, and how is she there? What's she there for? I don't know. Maybe they won't do the college thing. I was thinking they probably will, like to be like a recall that they
Yeah.
go to the college as well. But look, it's interesting. How do you get them all to be in the same place for some killings? And then I wonder whether a twin will die, because that will replicate Randy dying in the second one. So you kind of have maybe Mindy be the as a film nerd, she either dies, or this time, to sort of make up for Randy in Scream 2, she'll live.
She
and her brother
survives.
her brother will die. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go. I mean, overall, I think the score for Scream 5 is pretty decent on IMDb. I know it was very high when it first released. It's definitely dropped. At one point I saw it was 7.2. Then someone, I think, was reported, someone did mark it down as 6.2, but now it's back up to 6.6. So yeah, as of today, which is the 17th of March 2022, on IMDb, it actually sits at 6.5 from 69,682 reviews.
Wow.
So it's thereabouts, which is pretty much with a lot of the other sequels, to be honest. Like, let's look at Scream 2's, I think 6 something, 6.3. Way too low for Scream 2. The first Scream is 7.4, which I think is still too low.
Too low.
Who the hell is voting for these people? Just like go in just to knock them down. Scream 4 is 6.2. And Scream 3 is probably the lowest, 5.6. Scream 3. So that's, yeah. Which is interesting. It's interesting because I just wonder, like you said, I think Rotten Tomatoes was pretty high, certified fresh. But see, here's my other problem with Rotten Tomatoes now, and again, the critic scores. I think sometimes the critics, I just think they try and put the best reviews in possible. I think
so.
I don't, because I feel like there's been way too many movies recently, and especially divisive movies, like say something like The Last Jedi, where you get all hyped up because the reviews, it's like certified 98% fresh, and you go, oh my God, this must be the most amazing thing. And it's like, and maybe that's unfortunately another problem with having reviews so high or releasing them before everyone sees the movie, is people's expectations are too elevated. Like, maybe just say, yeah, it's all right for a horror film. Hope you enjoy it. Like, and then these people have lower expectation, go in and go, oh wow, that was amazing. I wasn't expecting, because all the reviews were at like 70%. And it's like, well, when they're 95 plus, like, people are going to have these huge expectations, and when it doesn't meet that, then that's probably when the toxic fans come out of the woodwork. It's like,
true.
Yeah, I got a theory on that. Like, I mean, you know, Scream 5 being, you know, Paramount and Spyglass, I don't know how much. It's always confusing sometimes with these studios, like who owns what and how much is owned by certain companies overall. But I think, at least when I look at stuff that's now owned by Disney, I feel like a lot of reviews that come out for those movies are always very high. And I think that's unfortunately maybe some reviewers and critics sell themselves out a little bit, because no one wants to give a bad review to a Disney thing, saying Disney own a lot of stuff now. They have a monopoly over Hollywood, and I'm sure a lot of people's potential jobs and prospects in that area probably don't grow too much if you start panning out Disney movies, even if it's your honest review. And that's why I think a lot of Disney stuff always gets really high reviews, because no one wants to badmouth Disney. So I just wonder, Scream's, I don't think attached to Disney at all, that as far as I know, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Back in the day it almost was, because I think, did Disney almost buy Dimension?
No, so Disney at one point would have owned
Miramax or something.
So they would have owned Scream 1, 2, and 3. So the original trilogy, and that probably also explains why, for people out there that don't know this, the last couple of sort of DVD/Blu-ray releases of the original Scream movies have not included 4, because the original trilogy was made by Miramax/Dimension Film, and then at some point when the Weinsteins were downsizing and changing things around, they actually sold Miramax to Disney. Well, Disney sort of financed Miramax a lot anyway, or almost like a silent partner, but then Disney bought out Miramax, so then they would have the whole catalog. And then the Weinsteins came up and started the Weinstein Company, Weinstein Films. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah.
So, and that was when Scream 4 was made under that banner. So that's where there's probably been that separation of who owns the movies. But then, obviously in subsequent years, Paramount have bought the catalogue. And that would also explain, for a long time leading up to Scream 5, which is very disappointing for fans, was there was a lot of confusion over even streaming. So people that didn't have the DVDs wanted to go back and watch all 4 films leading to the 5th movie, couldn't see the 4th one because the 4th one wasn't available, at least in Australia, and some place in America wasn't on the same streaming services.
No, but it finally is now. You can watch them all on Stan.
Well, it is now. Bit late.
Yeah, I know. Well, there was rumors. So when Disney were talking about how they would have owned Scream, rumors of a Scream ride at Disneyland.
What?
Nothing to do so much with Ghostface. I think they just would have used the name Scream. I think it was meant to be a roller coaster.
Oh, wow. Well, that makes sense.
We could have had like Sydney Prescott as the next Disney princess.
Oh, wow. There you go. Final girl princess.
Yeah. But speaking of going back to like a recall of Scream 2, I saw a good fan theory for the mother of Sam and Tara, that it could be Dawnie, the sorority sister.
Ah, yes.
That she could have somehow, followed Sydney to college, but they don't really interact. So like they wouldn't know each other, but they could have gone to high school together. And it would be a good way to bring her into the series.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I can't remember what group I saw that in too, was that Dawnie was actually being mentioned. I think some people hadn't even clicked she was in the second film, but people had known her for her, acting, and she was just on a list of actresses, and then someone must have realized, oh, hang on, she was in the second one, so it kind of makes sense in that universe. Well, of course, she kind of fits being that age. She could be the mum, and then it's a perfect tie-in to the Scream universe because she exists in it already.
I think it helps too. Like she was in Riverdale, and I didn't even know that was the same actress. She looks completely different. But she was in Riverdale, like Skeet Ulrich's in Riverdale. Like it all sort of tied together. But also, because I've seen rumors of like maybe the mother's like the cheerleader from the bathroom, but they're sort of forgetting that the Carpenter sisters have that sort of like Spanish Mexican type heritage. So Latino, where is that coming from? From this blonde cheerleader.
I was going to say, that blonde cheerleader, that was Skeet's girlfriend at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's it doesn't really marry up, like you said. There's definitely the Latino look wouldn't make a lot of sense. You would have to have, like we touched on earlier, you have to have Selma Hayek or Eva Longoria or someone.
It has to make sense to them. You can't just sort of discount their like heritage, I guess.
Yeah, you can't go white after all they've set up. So
because otherwise the cheerleader or other girl in bathroom, would have been a good little twist.
As we wind up, how do people follow you on social media?
So Instagram, Aussie Hello Witch, if they want to see me and all my cosplay fun, my Scream fun.
And have you got any recommendations? Now, we talked about YouTube. I think we've mentioned, not in this podcast, but off air, Zach Cherry's a good one if you like your Scream stuff.
Definitely.
Which is also, what's his Instagram? It's something funny. I think it's Retro Bitch Face or something like that.
Yes. And he has a great podcast now too, The Cherry Picker, where he
the Cherry Picker, yes.
analyzes horror movies.
So, yeah, let's reel off some podcasts. I should have linked them in a bit earlier, but so some podcasts that aren't sequel suck. We're going to be talking Scream 3 pretty soon. Angus, Michelle, and myself will be talking Scream 3 and 4. 5, just a little, behind the scenes. We've already recorded that. That's be out, I guess, after the 4th one. But if you go back, Chatflix, I've done all 5 of those episodes in regards to Scream, and the 5th one should be out shortly. There's something to check out if you want more Scream content, and some other ones I could say if you want good news articles and information. We've touched on hellosydney.com. Follow them on social media. They've got Twitter, Instagram. Ryan C. Showers, or Scream with Ryan C. Showers. That's a good podcast. He does some fun stuff on there. He does this speed round, which I've been meaning to touch base with him and give him my speed round choices. But that's a good one if you want to, again, more Scream content. And then we have someone that you're good friends with and that I know of, Meggie. She does YouTube videos for Scream, and she's also been to location a few times. So you want to,
Yes, she
have you got
has.
her stuff handy there? All right. So Michelle, what have you got there for Meggie?
So on YouTube, Miss Scream Queen 89, where you can follow along with where she's been to locations and all her giant Scream collection. And then she's Scream Queen 89 on Instagram.
Nice. And yeah, she's always posting heaps of stuff, and said I'm not half jealous that she's been to location a couple of times. And that's unfortunately, that's unfortunately, like, people go, oh, you live in Australia. So my mum especially. So we're lucky to live in such a great country, Australia. Yeah, but it's too far from America and everywhere else that we want to see in movies. So
I know, and I've had so many friends and other Scream fans saying, "Oh, you should come to the next tour," and I was like, "It's a bit far away, but maybe one day." We're just trying to let's put it into the universe.
let's put it in the universe. The sequel sucks. Get out to one of these locations, especially out to Windsor College. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. So, now that we're talking about locations, have you got a favorite Scream location?
I think it'd have to be Stu's house.
Yeah. Okay. So,
hands down.
Do you think the other movies that were in Woodsboro, so 5 and 4, well, again, I probably shouldn't say obviously, we know they were never filmed in the same place as Santa Rosa as the first one. Do you think they fooled people enough? Like, they were pretty good representations of Woodsboro, even though they were not filmed in the same location?
I think parts of 4, maybe, where they filmed the book signing, that sort of area, looked very similar to 1. They sort of give the vibe, but it's just not the same. I don't know.
I like, without researching it, I sort of, it's hard when you sort of hear movie news and they're filming a location. Well, I know that's not the original, but yeah, they definitely in Scream 4. I really thought it felt like it was a really good representation. It felt like it was in the same quietish sort of town, and even I didn't even realize, but the police station, they did a whole facade that was a replication of the first movie and slightly updated. And that was like just a frontage was put up. And it was, I think in the commentary, Wes says that they had I think in between the buildings, it was just a block of land, like it was an empty lot. And they were able to put up the police station frontage in that block of land.
Oh, cool.
In between shots. And it looks cool because it looks faultless to me. I was like, oh, that looks like the police station they used for the first one. It sort of had me fooled. And again, that's movie magic for you. And then you find out, oh, that's not even an actual building. That's just a frontage they put on. And like, could have fooled me. Well, it did fool me. But Scream 5 is an interesting one because I felt like there was certain aspects of it that did feel.
I think Tara's house fits in that sort of look, and especially like the houses from Scream 4, but maybe not where's the Woodsboro trailer park that Dewey's kind of living in.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit. That doesn't feel very Woodsboro-y, does it? It feels like
no.
next state along or something like that. Judy Hicks's house and a few of those locations seem Woodsboro-y, but it goes to show that Woodsboro is quite small town America and could kind of be anywhere. You just film it during the warmer summer months and you go to Woodsboro.
That's true.
What about, can I just ask, just last sort of funny thing, and it only just came across my mind just now. Scream 5 was the second time we saw, after Scream 4, we saw them in a hospital that seemed to be really vacant. And I know the explanation is, she was on a private floor, but it was very dark and not many people around. And
there'd still be staff. What do they say? Woodsboro Hospital, is it better or worse than the hospital from Halloween 2?
Yeah, well, Halloween 2 is the same. I'm just trying to think. I feel like there's a lot of horror films that love to get to a hospital. And, there was actually a famous meme or Instagram post many years ago where it had horror movie hospital and it's all dark and dingy and no one around. And then it had this is a real hospital and it's well lit. There's doctors and nurses and patients running around and stuff like that. So it is funny that once a horror movie, their perception of a hospital is quite different to ours. I just think it's funny a private floor was really dark and
and a private floor would still have some sort of medical staff to look after her, and surely a private floor could still be like a few other patients. It's just less people than the regular floor.
Yeah, and look, again, I don't want to sound nitpicky, and I haven't really talked about this before as well, like with that scene, like even when she's wanting to get out of her bed and she's unclipping and all that sort of stuff, like if she's already under some sort of guard and being watched and on a private floor, like you said, there should be at least a nurse on duty to be monitoring her progress and her safety or her state of mind or whatever, to make sure she's still clipped in and heart beating, all that sort of stuff. So the fact that that sort of doesn't, ring any sort of alarms is, again, it's very cliche horror movie. But that's the thing, I guess, is a little bit disappointing. It doesn't bother me because I feel like that's something, again, like we see in a Halloween movie or Friday the 13th or one of these other films. But I sometimes think Scream should be above that. Scream should be making a comment like, this is not how a hospital is.
I think they could have covered themselves by, in the same way we see the security guard that's been killed off screen, maybe if we'd seen the body count of like a few nurses or doctors like on top of that. So maybe someone had been there, but now they're all dead.
Yeah.
They could have covered themselves that, yes, there was staff. They just can't help her now.
Yeah. Even having the doctor sort of half alive, almost still alive, just crawling along, trying to get help or something like that. And then,
get stabbed in the back or whatever.
Because it does feel weird that it's like there's one police member, he's been stabbed or his throat slashed, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, before we get too negative, we should go down that rabbit hole and be too toxic. We probably should go, and fingers crossed, big Scream 6 movie coming, I'm assuming.
Soon.
I'm going to assume probably the same time of year. If they're doing it in June, it gives them a couple of months to film a movie and put it together.
Yeah, rumor 2023, the rumors, I think. So if all goes well.
Yeah, I think 2023 for sure. Whether it's January or it's a little bit later, hard to say. But in a perfect world, January I think is a good time for it. It worked and made money. Well, Scream 5 made money, so why not do the same thing again? But
exactly.
whether they can get it done in time is the I guess the question. Well, on that note, I guess we'll just have to agree. Not all sequels suck.
By definition alone, they're